Racism, police brutality, and racial violence can be complicated and possibly overwhelming issues to unpack, requiring an intimate understanding of segregation, income inequality, the criminal justice system, and more. It can be a lot, especially if these topics are new for you. Many Americans are turning to streaming platforms to learn more on these topics, as evidenced by The Help, which rocketed to the most viewed movie on Netflix. However, movies like The Help, Crash, Green Book, and more have been widely criticized by many, including Viola Davis, who regrets taking her role in The Help, as narratives that center white protagonists, viewpoints, emotions, and character arcs while using black trauma and pain to do so. To help you learn more and cut through the white noise, here's a list of some great series and documentaries that center black perspectives and are a strong starting point for understanding these pressing social issues and how all Americans are affected by them. Welcome to Cinematic. This video is about the 11 shows and documentaries to help you learn about racial justice and police brutality. Before I start, I request you to subscribe to Cinematic, like and share this video, and stay tuned with us. To start with, we have When They See Us in 2019. The gripping miniseries from Ava DuVernay dramatized the case of the exonerated five, previously called the Central Park Five, a group of black and Latino teens who were wrongfully convicted in 1989 of raping and assaulting of women in Central Park.
They made us lie, right?
Why are you doing us like this?
That conviction was overturned in 2002, only after the real assailant came forward. But the case became a real-time study in how police, the criminal justice system, and the news media tried and convicted boys of color, despite a glaring lack of evidence. Next, 13th, in 2006. Using plain, easy-to-understand language, logic, and facts, DuVernay lays out how the 13th Amendment led to mass incarceration in the United States.
In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, they would not do it again so easily.
Breaking down the racist origins of the war on drugs and coded language like tough on crime and law and order, this fierce documentary is an eye-opening and unsettling examination of how the amendment created a pipeline to put black boys and men in for-profit prisons. It's a must-see for every American and will challenge the beliefs of people who have never questioned the notion of liberty and justice for all. Next, the Central Park Five in 2012.
5 black and Hispanic boys were arrested for a crime they didn't do and sent away for a crime they didn't do. But unfortunately, it's all too common in the United States.
Acclaimed documentarian Ken Burns' work on the aforementioned New York City case contains tons of archival footage and first-person testimony from reporters, people involved in the case, and historical context that explains how bias against people of color allowed 5 teenage boys to be sent to prison for a crime that they didn't commit. Next, Time, the Khalif Browder story in 2017.
If I just say that I did it, nothing's gonna be done about it. I didn't do it, no justice is served, nobody hears nothing at all. I had to fight.
It examines the case of Khalif Browder, who was a 16-year-old kid from the Bronx accused of stealing a backpack in 2009. He was sent to the notorious Rikers Island without trial and, unable to afford bail, placed in solitary confinement for 2 years of a 3-year stay. Upon his release at age 22, he died by suicide, a death advocates say was due to the mental, physical, and sexual abuse he endured in prison. His family settled a suit with the New York City for $3.3 million in 2019. But as this series explains, his imprisonment highlighted troubling ways the black and Latino people are severely punished in the judicial and correctional systems. Now next, 16 Shots in 2018.
He was shot 16 times.
16 shots! Shut down! 16 shots! Shut down! 16 shots! Shut down!
Saw him. He was their son. He was their brother. He was them.
This documentary looks at the 2014 shooting death of Laquan McDonald by Chicago police and the cover-up that followed. As the film shows, police initially said the shooting was justified, but pressure from activists and journalists forced police to release the footage that sent the Chicago Police Department and local Chicago government officials into upheaval as the community demanded justice. And now next, Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story in 2018.
Just hurts really bad.
The case that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement, the 2012 shooting of Trayvon Martin, an unarmed black boy who was killed by George Zimmerman in so-called self-defense, is pried open in this series. Next, Stay Woke, the Black Lives Matter movement in 2016.
People wanted not just answers, they wanted justice.
We're seeing elderly people out there and children out there.
Black Lives Matter has been called the new civil rights movement. It's been called a new terrorist organization. This series explains the origins of the movement and what it's really all about. And now next, Let It Fall, Los Angeles 1982-1992 in 2017.
He stopped on Florence and Normandy, and everybody was beating him up so bad, but the last thing I seen was the brick.
John Ridley, the masterful producer and director behind 12 Years a Slave and ABC's incredible series American Crime, examines the turbulent decade in Los Angeles after 4 police officers caught on the tape beating Rodney King were acquitted. The film takes on the 1992 riots, which left more than 60 people dead and caused a reported $1 billion in damage that happened immediately after, but puts that devastation into a greater context, including the long-standing tensions with the police that boiled over the verdict. And next, Baltimore Rising in 2017. Tracing the protests in Baltimore after the death of Freddie Gray, who died of injuries in his neck and spine while in police custody in 2015, this documentary captures what happened after unsuccessful prosecutions of officers involved in his death. And now next, Say Her Name, the life and death of Sandra Bland in 2018.
I said, what are you in jail for? She said, I really don't know. And she said, my arm is hurting really bad.
What happened to Sandra Bland? That chilling story, which begins with the young black woman pulled over for a simple lane change and ends with her mysterious death inside a Texas prison, is examined in this HBO series. Bland, a politically active woman who recorded her own frightening interaction with an officer, somehow ended up hanging in a cell, supposedly from suicide. But as this documentary shows, the circumstances and evidences are more than suspicious and raise unsettling questions about what we don't know. And now next, American to Me in 2018.
I don't think people quite understand how life and death this job can be.
Called a crash course on race by Sally Bowen of Refinery 29, this 10-part series unpacks racial, economic, and class issues in contemporary American education by spending a year inside an affluent Chicago high school to get to the root of why white students' grades were improving while the black students' grades were stagnated. Don't forget to check our previous video on true crime documentaries. I have mentioned the link in the description. Subscribe and keep coming back for more to Cinematic.